Hey guys, welcome to Cape and Cowl Cafe. I'm Nemo, and today we're going to be talking about how Ultimate Spider-Man missed the mark. If you guys enjoy the video at any point today, I'd really appreciate if you hit that like and subscribe button, but let's hop right in. Okay, so this topic is going to be a little controversial, I'm sure, because this comic has gotten a lot of praise, but after sitting with it for a while, I really do feel like Ultimate Spider-Man just didn't quite land the way that a lot of us hoped it would. Now, when this book was first announced, it honestly sounded like the perfect Spider-Man comic. You had Jonathan Hickman writing it, which immediately got people excited because he was known for these long-term ambitious stories. And then you have Marco Cicchetto on the art, who is just one of the best comic book artists working in the industry right now. He is just so good. But ultimately, the real hook of this story was the premise. Instead of the typical teenage Spider-Man origin story, this version of the character gives us a fully grown Peter Parker who already has a family before he even becomes Spider-Man. What an interesting take, especially for people who are just sick and tired of young teenage Spider-Man. This sounded amazing. I mean, we got to see Peter be married to MJ again, we got to see their kids, we got to see an older version of the character. That idea alone feels like something that we've been asking for years, since One More Day. For decades, Spider-Man comics have been kind of stuck in a loop where Peter keeps getting reset to a younger version of himself. He loses jobs, relationships, he loses progress in his life, and the character is constantly pushed back towards square one. So the idea of finally seeing Peter as an adult who is actually grown up felt incredibly refreshing. And at first, the book does a great job establishing this world, but as the series continues, a lot of cracks start to show, and it's really disappointing. When you step back and take a look at the overall structure of the story, it becomes clear that this comic book has some major issues. Now, it's not a terrible book. There are definitely some good elements in the story, but in my opinion, the series missed the mark in several key ways, and those issues become more noticeable the longer the run goes on. So today, I want to break down the biggest problems with the series and explain why, despite having such an amazing premise, Ultimate Spider-Man never quite reaches the level it should have. Let's get started. Also, there will be spoilers for this entire book. Be warned. Alright, so my first major issue with the book is the pacing. If you look at most great Spider-Man comics, there's usually a specific rhythm to the storytelling. You get the personal drama, you get the character moments, but those things are usually balanced with action, tension, and movement. Spider-Man stories are supposed to feel energetic. They're supposed to have momentum. Peter is constantly juggling responsibilities, fighting villains, swinging through the city, and barely keeping his life together. In Ultimate Spider-Man, that energy just isn't really there. There's not a ton of stakes. Issue after issue is filled with long conversations between characters. That is the majority of this book, and some of those conversations are interesting. Hickman is obviously a writer who loves exploring ideas and world building through dialogue, but at a certain point, the balance starts to feel completely off. I mean, there are entire issues where Peter barely does anything as Spider-Man. Instead, we're sitting through meetings between different characters, dinner dates, discussions about the larger Ultimate Universe conspiracy, or exposition about how this world works. It honestly kind of just drones on sometimes. It's kind of boring. And while that kind of storytelling works in certain comics, like, you know, more detective-based Batman comics or The Question, Spider-Man really needs that sense of movement and action and stakes to stay engaging. It's just not. Alright, the next issue I have with this book is the story structure and how it constantly skips forward in time. Now, between most issues, an entire month will pass, okay? It's kind of like Batman Year One or The Long Halloween, where every single issue takes place during a different month. And this is cool in concept, but it doesn't really work for a new universe where you have characters to introduce and establish. We don't know these people, okay? So just skipping around through their lives isn't going to help us get to know who they are or why they do the things that they do. Major events will happen off-panel. Characters will develop relationships or change in ways that we never get to see because it happens off of the page. And while time jumps can sometimes be effective in storytelling, here they feel really disruptive and just they make the whole story feel disjointed. Now, in this book, I really wanted to see how Peter being Spider-Man affects his family over the course of time, you know, but gradually. But after like the second issue, everyone knows and they're just kind of like, oh, our dad's Spider-Man, that's cool. They don't take the time to explore, you know, how big of a change that is for someone's life. You know, if you found out that your dad was a superhero, you know, you guys wouldn't just gloss over it and accept it. And then the next day you're like, oh, well, you know, it's whatever. It's kind of normal now. No, you wouldn't do that. That's weird. So why is the book doing that? They need to explore these ideas. So when the narrative keeps jumping forward in time like this, you really lose a sense of progression for the characters. They don't really have arcs. They just jump forward in time and then they feel like a completely different person. So instead of watching these things unfold naturally, you're basically being told that those developments happened. You didn't get to see it. It creates a weird feeling where the reader is constantly trying to catch up with the story rather than experiencing it in real time, you know? Like, it kind of feels like you're missing issues when you're reading the book. You're like, oh crap, like, did did I miss something? Because there's just such a huge jump and something random happens and you have no idea what's going on. I was lost so many times while reading this. Maybe I'm just stupid, but like I had to reread issues because I just couldn't keep track of what was happening. All right, my next issue with the book is the lack of family dynamics. Now, this is one of the biggest selling points for this series, was that this story was going to be a family-focused Spider-Man story. He has a wife and kids. That's the whole point. So we were told that this version of Peter Parker would already be married, already be a father, and that this book would explore what that kind of life looks like when you suddenly become a superhero. That concept is incredibly exciting because it opens the door to so many unique story possibilities, and honestly, it's something that's really relatable to a whole new demographic of Spider-Man readers. I mean, imagine Peter having to hide his identity from his kids for the entire story. I know that Mayday found out really early on, it was like issue 2 or something, and yeah, it was kind of a cute moment, but ultimately, I would have liked to explore that dynamic a lot more. I mean, we're always used to Spider-Man hiding his identity from love interests and teachers and Aunt May, but never his kids. Like, let's explore that. And I mean, Mary Jane was cool. She was written well, a lot better than, mainline Mary Jane, but she didn't really have a lot to do with the story. She was just kind of the wife that was worried about Peter the whole time, and they didn't really even focus on that aspect of the relationship that much. It was a few little dialogue scenes, and again, this book has way too much dialogue. I just feel like they kind of missed it with her. The only member of the Parker family that got to have the spotlight in some way was Richard Parker, and that's because he got the Picotech suit and he got to fight alongside his father for a few issues, and he was kind of doing his own thing as a younger Spider-Man, which I really enjoyed. I liked Richard Parker in this book a lot, but the only reason why he's in the spotlight is because he's one of the Spider characters and he's kind of doing his own thing. But this book was promoted as a family story, and yet 2 of the 4 family members are just completely omitted. It's weird. And this is all really disappointing because the family dynamic is the most unique part of this whole concept. So instead of diving into these relationships and making them the emotional heart of the story, the book frequently shifts its focus towards larger plot threads and other characters, which leads me to my next issue with this book. Peter Parker feels like a guest star in his own book, and this is possibly the biggest issue with the whole series. Spider-Man feels like he's not really the main character, and I mean, that's a serious problem when your book is literally called Ultimate Spider-Man. Throughout the whole series, a huge amount of narrative attention is given to other characters, particularly Harry Osborn and Gwen Stacy. I was getting really frustrated with these 2 characters because Harry Osborn had this whole, heir to the Osborn Empire Iron Man thing kind of going on. He was the Green Goblin, but a more Iron Man version of him where he was kind of, this edgy vigilante. Cool. Like, I thought it was interesting for the first few issues when he showed up and when he kind of started partnering up with Spider-Man. It was cool, but like Gwen Stacy as Mysterio, why was this such a huge focus for the story? Nobody cares about the Mysterio cult or whatever. I kind of zoned out in the last few issues. I was so pissed off by this. I just wanted to see Spider-Man. I don't care about this alternate version of Gwen Stacy, and Harry Osborn had way too much time in the spotlight. It was just too much. Now, 2 other characters who got way too much attention were J. Jonah Jameson and Uncle Ben. Now, I get it, Uncle Ben is alive in this universe. That's really cool. However, anytime that they were together, it felt like they were pitching an Office spin-off sitcom show where they're just, cracking jokes and starting up a paper business together. And I don't feel like they're really contributing that much to the story until the last issue when their paper business finally became relevant in taking down the Kingpin. Before that, they would just show up and they would have, some fun banter and talk about how old they are. It was boring. Like, why was this here? Now, I'm not just trying to trash on these side characters for the sake of trashing on them, but, supporting characters are obviously important in Spider-Man stories. Some of the best Spider-Man runs ever have strong supporting casts, but in this case, it feels like Peter is just reacting to things that other characters are doing. He's not, the hero in his own story. There is so much time given to these other characters, and it just feels like Peter gets left behind. It's kind of ridiculous. So instead of driving the story forward through his own decisions and actions, he's just kind of getting placed in situations where somebody else is pulling the strings. So honestly, I think they should just call this book Ultimate Green Goblin or Ultimate Mysterio, because that's really what it felt like. Alright, my next issue actually has to do with one of Peter Parker's character traits. Now, I know that this is an alternate universe, okay? We don't know this guy. He's different from 616. However, I feel like Peter's intelligence was severely underused in this story. Okay, we know that this guy is still smart. He's not an idiot, okay? I know he quit science early on in his career to go work at the Daily Bugle, but he's still a very intelligent individual, and it's kind of a core aspect of Spider-Man's character across the board. No matter what universe you're in, Peter Parker is basically a genius. I mean, in so many classic Spider-Man stories, Peter survives dangerous situations because he figures out another way to win and he uses his brain, and in this series, Peter rarely gets the opportunity to demonstrate that side outside of himself. Instead, technology, resources, and information are just kind of handed to him by other characters, especially Otto Octavius and Harry Osborn. Like, he just gets the Picotech suit from Tony Stark, he just gets the web shooters, he gets the spider. He's even offered an freaking Iron Spider suit, which he turns down, but like, still, he's not doing anything himself. Everyone is just kind of helping him be a superhero, and he doesn't have to do any of the work. The only thing that he has to do is practice how to swing and fight. That's it. So, like, instead of inventing things himself or solving problems through ingenuity, he often feels like someone who is being guided through the story. Like, other characters are holding his hand the entire time. And this goes back to the whole, Peter Parker doesn't really feel like the main character in this book thing. He doesn't, He feels like a side character, and he also can come off, kind of incompetent at times. It's really disappointing. All right, now this is the dumbest part of the book. I just hated this. I don't know why they did that. It felt forced. Anyway, eventually the series introduces a storyline involving Otto Octavius becoming the superior Spider-Man. Again, like, why? Why shove this in there? You had like one issue left in the book and you still shoved this in there. There was no time for this, okay? Focus on Peter Parker Spider-Man or Richard Parker Spider-Man, whichever one you want to do. Like, this was a 24 issue series. Why are there 3 Spider-Men by the end? This is just, it's getting ridiculous. And once again, it ends up pulling attention away from Peter Parker, who should be the main character of his own book. I mean, the whole point of this book existing was to explore the Parker family, okay? That was the whole concept. And if you don't believe me that, the Parker family gets sidelined here, they literally get sent to the desert, and that's where they spend a few issues of the book. They get sidelined to the desert. They're just shoved out of the way so that Harry Osborn and Gwen Stacy can take up more of the story. This is just stupid. Now, of course, even though I'm trashing a lot of the book, there are still plenty of things to enjoy about it. The concept is amazing, okay? Older Spider-Man with a beard, with a wife and kids, that's great. The art by Marco Cicchetto is just unmatched, okay? I feel like really terrible books can be carried by amazing art. I feel like Batman Hush is just kind of mid. It's really overrated, but Jim Lee's art carries the whole thing. Same thing with this book. So I think this book had a really strong start, a really strong concept, but just as it went on, it kind of lost track of what it was trying to do, and it got lost in the sauce when they were exploring other areas of this universe. And by the way, what a shame that this universe ended already, Like, they saw DC with their success in the Absolute Universe, and they're like, you know what? We're gonna quit. We're done, okay? Like, they were just admitting defeat. DC won. But yeah, this book is just, it's really disappointing. I was super excited for this thing, and it just let me down. Now, of course, this is all just my opinion. If this book was your favorite thing ever written since the Bible, that's okay. You have your right to your opinion. That's fine. I just thought that it was a little disappointing. That's all. Also, I just had to mention this. The ending was just so bad. So bad and convenient, okay? Kingpin and Mr. Negative just happened to both accidentally kill themselves at the exact same time. Really? Like, I get it. Your book was canceled. You had to rush out the last issue and kind of cram everything in there, but you couldn't come up with something better than the main 2 bad guys killing themselves at the same time. What are we doing? Alright guys, that's going to be it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed it all, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like and subscribe button, and drop in the comments down below what you thought of Ultimate Spider-Man. Let's talk about it. But yeah, until next time, I'll see you guys later.